We're getting through this. Oh, okay, go for it. Kick us off.
All right, we're live with a panel presentation from joint effort between LASCON, thank you very much, and the Absolute AppSec podcast. So thank you for coming. Thank you to our panelists. We're about to get into introductions. Seth, you take it away.
Welcome to another episode, right? Ken didn't do his normal introduction, so I don't know what we're doing up here. Let's be honest. This is State of Absolute AppSec. We're happy to be here. We've done this a couple of times at different conferences just to try out actually having a discussion about what's going on in the application security industry, what we see from different people. We've got, we'll do introductions here. By way of introductions, I am Seth Law. I run a small consulting firm at Redpoint Security. Apparently, I'm trying to talk too fast today. And do a lot of code review, other stuff like that. I'm younger than Ken, just so everyone knows.
About 15 to 27
Let's see. I think that's about it. This is Ken.
I'm not as old as Seth. I love doing this. I love, basically the theme of this is we're going to reflect on where we're at right now as an industry and then where we can go next. And we're going to garner some opinions and really pick these folks' brains. So I am very excited for this.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm the CTO of Driver on Security. Actually, another member here. So.
We're outnumbered.
It just happens to be. That you're with the shirt. So James, I'm going to kick it off with you. Let's start introductions, actually. It's a good segue. So James Wickett, CEO of Driver on Security. You want to talk a little bit about how we met, just your background in general, just real quick.
Yeah, I was on this podcast. And I was like, who are these guys? I've known Ken for a while, but really excited to be here doing this today. And I've been in the AppSec space for a long time. Love the LASCON crowd, awesome crowd, and helped start this thing with Josh Sokol and a few others here that are still in the crowd. It's really awesome to see LASCON running strong for all these years. So. It's really cool that we're able to do this.
Yeah, you've been involved with DevOps Days Austin, DevSec Ops Days, is that accurate?
Yeah.
And LASCON. So you are in this conference room. You've been here a lot, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
I
don't know what else to say. Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. And for the rest of you, give out great swag. All right. So I'm going to move on to Evan Johnson. Evan, do you want to talk a little bit? Evan, we've known Evan for a very long time. Evan's the co-founder over at Run Reveal. I think you've been all over the place. You've been at Cloudflare. You've been at correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Just take it away. You tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really happy to be here. This is only my second LASCON. I didn't know you helped start it, so thanks to everybody who helped put on LASCON. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Run Reveal, which is a brand new modern detection platform. And in my past life, I'm a recovering AppSec addict, I'd say. I ran product security at Cloudflare for about 4.5 years and was at Segment for a little while, was at Cloudflare again for a little while. So I go way back in AppSec. Done it kind of my whole career, but there's a whole crew of people in this same group that I met when I lived in Northern Virginia, and they've been really great to me.
I'm pretty sure we tried to hire you, and you said, no, screw you, I'm out. And that was that.
That's true.
Yep. So we're looping you in now. So, yes.
But we kept in touch because they were great people.
Cool. And then we have Aaron.
People at best. That's great.
We've got Aaron Guzman, and I'm trying to remember, Aaron, like the first time that we met was probably
I want to say Cactus Con.
Oh, yeah.
So
and it was
16
something like that. Yeah.
About mobile, even I think
mobile security stuff. Yep. It was good times, right?
Yeah. I was back in my consulting days, and I think you were consulting as well.
Yep.
And so I think we were probably the only ones talking about mobile security, or I think in that event. So we, kind of connected and stayed in touch and run into each other. Right, AppSec's a small community, so. A little bit about me, I had our trust assurance group at Cisco Meraki. So everything from firmware security to API, front end, back end, mobile, and even down to like mobile device management code. So really end to end on the product space, and see a lot of different opportunities to, that you see trends from, kind of like the old school embedded space, and then, the new cool kid kind of cloud, service mesh, data mesh, and all these other fun, more complex things, right? And so again, these problems to solve, and how do you make that all fit together from one product offering, right, end to end, from the hardware device all the way to the cloud features. So really fun problems to solve.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
So you speak for Cisco, just like right out. We're
No,
gonna-
no.
Okay. So, yeah, you speak. Of course, these are all our opinions. And we'll just go with it, right? Let's start with the first question. So this is a philosophical question that we have, I guess, right? So in your mind, what is the difference between product security and application security? We get asked this all the time in Slack, on the podcast. And, are they different skill sets? What is it like? What is it that differentiates them? Who do you want to turn it over to? Who do you want to ask that to first?
I'm going to go with Aaron.
First, yes.
Thank you. I actually have a product security team and an application security team. And it's much more clear cut in my world because we have devices, like on-prem devices, and we have firmware, and we have hardware. So there's the same principles apply, right, in the practices, and just the implementation and how we go about performing those practices might be different. So it's sort of clear cut from our hardware for my product security team, and wireless even, right? We have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi 7 and things like that. And I mentioned sort of our APIs and front end, back end, and that's sort of just how we have the scope. But I have realized the sort of like overlap in the industry and how these terms have caused confusion. Certain cloud SaaS, right, solutions or companies would say product security. The product security team focused on these cloud offerings, right? And there wasn't really a differentiating factor that you can really tell. And I'm seeing that even with other terms like security engineering, right? What is security engineering to an organization? Is that different from product security, application security? Yeah. And sometimes they're the same.
Right? Yeah. Well, and I mean, we struggle with this across the industry. Is like we have no regular set of terms that we use, right? And I think that's what we're getting at here, because we struggle. Like as I go into places and what is a pen test, right? Like a company comes in and says, hey, we want a pen test done. And like their understanding that is so different than everything else that we see. So it's the same, so it's interesting to hear. So, but I want to flip that to Evan now too, right? Like what do you think the difference there is?
I maybe have strong opinions on this that I've formed over the years. The reason it became product security at Cloudflare and my title was Senior Director of Product Security was because when I joined the company, I didn't like the term application security. And so I knew Moxie Marlinspike was head of product security at Twitter, and I looked at his Twitter and I was like, that's a cool title. I'm going to be a product security engineer. I'm not an application security engineer. And that's how the team eventually got called product security. But then fast forward many years, and I came to read a blog by, I don't know how to say his name properly, from Google, Michael Zalewski, who's very well known, and he wrote about how he was leading product security and how all the things that were entailed in that. And I tend to think that product security is a superset of application security. So at Cloudflare, that was enterprise security, identity and access management, all of the vulnerability management tooling, all of the application security, most of software security. And I think that there's also a soft skill aspect to it of like understanding what you're even selling, understanding what the offering is. And so I think that application security is like reading the lines of code, making sure that they're secure, understanding the flaws in the software that are written. And then product security is the way that the thing exists in the world and the way that people interact with it, and making sure that that's secure, which includes application security.
Cool. Good. Let's. Yeah.
Wait, do I get a chance?
Sure. James, you're up here.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
Here it is. Here it is.
Here it is.
That's it. $50,000. That's the difference. Yeah. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which way though? Which way?
Well, and also, swaps is really hard, and OWASP is a lot easier. So that it has to be two different things. You just can't swap it out that way. No, I think we saw tech marketing to DevRel, right? Like what was the difference there? Right? Like there is a certain new set of skills that we needed. We needed a new label to put on it. There's other people who are providing that value. So yeah, sometimes you gotta call something different. That's okay. I think that's good for the world.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. If
It's just a label.
It's just a label. It's not that deep. That's what you're saying.
I think all the things that you mentioned, I was always going to repeat all the stuff you said because it's like, it is that superset, right? You are carrying that product that's being delivered. And I think that whenever we are able to apply that label and also that job title and role, like I feel like all that sort of fits. And it kind of comes through this organic movement. And so, and that's why I feel like, yeah, it is a label, but it is also like a meaningful label that conveys things that people are willing to put money behind that as well when we're trying to hire for those positions. So I wasn't trying to just completely,
No, I think that's fair.
I think like that's the desirable thing for companies. People want that, right?
Okay.
So, okay.
All right. We'll let Ken. ask
Where
the next one.
what about you guys?
Where is the?
What's that?
Go.
No, so that was kind of the easier question. Now we're going to get some maybe spicier ones. I apologize. This might take more of the feedback, so I'm going to move for a second here. But so what are some of the positive? Let's start on a positive note. What are some of the positive things that right now application security in your mind is getting right? Like what are we doing? Okay, whether it's tooling, processes, methodologies, whatever, as a community building, what are we doing right? So I'll first start with you, Evan. I'm just going to go this way.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like 8 years ago or so, 10 years ago, everybody's like, we got to solve this with secure frameworks, and we did that. Like for the most part, you build a lot of web applications and frameworks today are getting more secure. So I write a lot of software in Go, and those same issues in Go from PHP went back when I wrote that haven't been repeated because the frameworks really solved it. And if you're still writing Java, that might not be true for you, but applications that are getting built that are new have a completely different set of problems. So I don't feel like we're repeating the same mistakes. We probably are a little bit, but a lot of the old issues are getting fixed at the framework level.
I mean, when you look at that OWASP top 10 list, it's clear that things have changed. It's clear that things are getting better.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Aaron.
Aaron just goes quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do I follow up with that one? Yeah, so I mean, in the embedded space where I work, right, I feel there have been some progressions in some of the languages like Golang and Rust, right, and some containerized architectures that help with that sort of separation. So from my perspective, like definitely, like there's more architectures that are being built, in a layered fashion, right, at least in a device that makes it easier to develop and also easier to support, and even just general vulnerabilities and the management of those vulnerabilities. The cloud side is kind of wild to me in terms of when I say cloud, I mean like the SaaS and all the all the frameworks. Like yes, things are built into frameworks and have made things a lot easier. But these sort of pervasive API sort of maybe classes of vulnerabilities and how you tie an authorization to maybe your UI, maybe it's separate, maybe you built that later on. There's still some fabrics that you've seen, right, with like, maybe fashions of disclosing data from APIs in the mobile app or a web application and things like that we haven't really solved yet. Or maybe there's solutions out there that can help solve these at a framework level. But certainly, right, like at the same time, we have all these different, proliferations of build environments. We have these, these product offerings, have their own build environments, and you have to secure those as well. And how do you do that in a way that's interoperable from, maybe a governance, or I don't want to say that those compliance words, but from a higher level, when you have a team that needs to scale, right? And what's the best way to do that when you have all these different inputs? But certainly, right, there's an improvement, with what we're seeing, but also some of the same things keep popping up. Like I said, those particular vulnerability classes. But yeah, we're just keep
a little bit of orchestration, tooling, some improvements, and staying like in terms of speed and agility and flexibility. Definitely some improvements there. I mean, I'll add my own spin here. I think that people are, in terms of like teams that are practitioners internal to companies, I do think like, no offense to vendors, I don't mean this, but I would say that a lot of tools have been marketed for developers, but not necessarily landed. And so you see like some of these, one example that comes to mind is like Chime and Monocle. Like I love how they're kind of setting things up internally at their company for their developers to just roll right into their GitHub flow They take into account a bunch of different factors beyond just like scanning. They look at like, do you have secure defaults on for like the repo? They make sure that ownership's healthy. They take into account like service catalog things, just a whole wide variety of factors, but they do it inside that GitHub kind of flow and where the developers live. And I think that we're getting smarter in some ways at actually building tools for developers.
Yeah. Well, my take there, right? Like it goes back to those Netflix days, the idea of a paved path, the secure frameworks that have come about. Like there's ways that we can do it, right? Like I always go back to early OWASP days, like top 10, and SQL injection was everywhere, right? And how often do we see it nowadays, right? Like it's very, very small edge cases when someone's not using the ORM or the framework properly. So there is good things that are happening. It's just the speed of development is increasing over and over and over. And which brings us to the next question, like the nihilistic view of AppSec, right?
This is the one everyone came for.
Where do you see AppSec struggling? We'll start back on this side, so we'll give Aaron the first go at it.
You get to go first on that one.
I know. Well,
drop that bomb on you.
I touched on some of the same like challenges that we're seeing. Just I don't want to talk about scaling again, but we have all these practices in place. We have all these tools. We have all these inputs, all this data. Right? How do you make sense of it? At least in a bigger organization, right? There's a lot going on. You have acquisitions and such, right? And so, how do you use your team to prioritize like effectively, especially when you have security theater, compliance, kind of knocking at your door, asking for something that might not make sense, and you have to go and appease them because they don't maybe understand CI/CD pipelines and how tools within CI platforms or even just like GitHub, GitLab, and all these are make it easier, right? And they want to see, I want you to block at the end, and it's like things work differently nowadays. So that sort of like translation, and even having maybe a internal compliance team to help you with that translation, or be there to advocate for what the controls you have and things like that. I think that's a challenge, just that barrier of how to communicate, what we're doing and how effective we are, and then just the new ways of simplifying, right? Minimizing that risk at getting the code out. I guess you can say would be one of the things AppSec is struggling on. A couple things. Okay. Good.
No, that's great. And I feel like, and this is probably real similar to all the absolute AppSec, and we're probably hearing it to our hearts up here, but it's like we had a lot of movement where we're saying, okay, we're gonna shift things left, right? And the shift left, I think, has worked unfortunately for some people. I think some people it has worked okay. For some developers, it's like okay, so driver security, we're a pipeline, we're inside the pipeline, we're doing security analysis, right? But the developers are like, okay, we have like 13 tools now, right? And it's like oh great, and it's like, and they're like, and it takes forever. And so now instead of just committing, small batches, which everything that like DevOps and Agile and Lean is all built on, right? Developers are now like saying, they don't use the word batching in their code because they know they not to do that. But it's like, we cannot wait to check in until later, right? So now your pull requests, your code commits are in like hundreds of lines, long or longer, right? And it's hard for them because we've changed the economy for developers, and we've said that thing that really should only take just a couple minutes to happen, like we're going to make that take a couple hours or even half an hour or something like that. Like we've incentivized them to go back to kind of like a mini waterfall type of flow. And so that's a thing that I've seen time and time again, where like the shift left was just kind of more like dumping left, right? Taking tools that were meant for a prior generation, a prior specialization, and kind of like pushing that on the unintended audience, right? And it's had some long-ranging and unintended consequences because of that. So, all right. You were expecting something funnier, I think, but I was like, I think I should actually say something a little more serious here.
Yeah.
But
I defer to my friend James here. I think that as you were talking about shifting left, which is, I got tired of hearing that within the first 3 times I heard that. But we also shifted up in the stack where the network layer stopped being, like security over the last 20 years has shifted up where it used to be what vendors are you buying at a conference? There's like the firewalls and the whatever networking gear. And now it's all like application security is kind of the star of the show. And so how do you detect at the application layer? How do you do this at the how do you do compliance at the application layer? So I feel like there's a lot more pressure put on application security these days, where it's kind of the main thing. And like a software company, they probably don't care a lot about what's happening on their network because they have a few really good controls in place, and then everything else is HTTP. And so, like, it's a lot more pressure on the code you write, what the developers are doing, and then coupled that with dumping left and the
I don't know why I said that.
That's
I'm regretting that I said
We're
that.
stealing that now.
Internet Hall of Fame
It's
right
over,
there.
yeah. Dumping left.
That'll be our main clip for this.
That'll be at the on the OWASP top 10 next year.
It's dumping left.
Yeah. But I think a lot of the tools just don't fit, don't work with modern stuff. Like I've worked in really modern things. Like I struggle with the output of a lot of the tools where they just didn't help me. And so I think that vendors really tried, but those two things together made it still really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I always go back to that speed of development, that cycle that we're in now. And I see so many companies that struggle with, hey, I've got a network, or a dynamic scanner to scan this application, but that was built 15 years ago and doesn't understand React or modern frameworks. And it's not that the product doesn't work as intended, because it does, but it's just taking too long. It doesn't spit out relevant results. And all of a sudden, developers find a way to, they find the least, the path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
And so what do? They ignore security, they go around it, they go shadow IT. I mean, how many AWS instances were stood up because they just didn't want to deal with security, right? Like in the early days of cloud, like that's what happened. And we're continuing to see that cycle. Yes, we try and secure as we go in there in the product AppSec space, but developers follow that path of least resistance, and we're not in front of them. We're just not.
Yeah, I'd argue that's not their fault.
Yeah.
Right? Or that's not their problem, that's our problem.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, so they just mute our tests, right?
Yeah.
Just don't care.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's important for us to realize like that is a failure on us.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because like developers taking the path of least resistance, like that just means they're human. Right? They're just doing the thing. It's like they have a job to do. And developers, I think, do really care about security, but as an industry, we generally give them a very confusing path on how to get there. Right? It's like I don't know. Right? Like, what's going on here?
No, like you're absolutely right, because how many pen test, whatever that is. How many reports do you see? And the recommendation is like, oh, we'll do what's in the OWASP top 10. And they're like, what is this WASP thing? I got a hive somewhere. And like, like we do a very poor job of communicating with them what needs to happen. And so what are they going to do with it? Any of us would do the same thing. I'd be like, okay, well, I'll just put that over here and ignore it until my boss tells me I have to actually work on it.
Yeah, I think one of the key pieces of data kind of buried inside of the DevSecOps report that Sonatype runs was like, kind of one of their headliners is like 50% of developers want to work on security but don't have enough time to, or something like that. But inside of it, there's buried like 20%, like 1 out of 5 developers, like they say, like, I actually have no idea what security wants me to do. Right? Like, I just don't even know. Right? Like, wow, that's problematic.
20%. Yeah, that's problematic.
Yeah, I mean,
Just a little.
That's not even saying that people who like the question is more phrased around, and I'm spacing it's like how much security work do they do or how much they care about it. And it's like someone is like it's just too confusing to even get done, right? Not even say the ones that are like not able to participate because they're not allowed to, or the other things that are kind of left out.
Yeah.
Actually, show of hands, how many software developers are at this conference, as a matter of fact? Relatively small percentage. So I mean, that's kind of my point, right? Like this is us talking about this for the most part.
Yeah.
Kind of a weak point, I think, of ours. But also, like, I think that, so I want to add, I think, like, OWASP is interesting in the sense that, we were talking about this before, where it's
it's not that OWASP isn't necessarily a governing body, but without a governing body or someone enforcing some sort of like terminology standards and approaches, you're going to have this sort of fractured ecosystem forever. And OWASP, we're at OWASP conference, right? That's our main vehicle for instituting these things. So I think we could improve there too on unifying. It's just simple things.
Yeah, I mean, look at the CNCF, like they do a fairly good job with that, right?
We need an equivalent.
We need an equivalent.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
we've got some equivalent.
So basically, it's just all bad. That's where we're at.
No.
No.
And actually, that's something that has come up, right, on the podcast before, where people are kind of like, I'm upset with the tooling that we have today or the methodologies that we have. And it's sort of like, well, don't be, because progress takes time. We have to, evolution takes time, and it's been 22 years that OWASP has been around. I think 95 is when JavaScript was introduced. 98 was the first time SQL injection was ever brought. We're a relatively new thing, basically, is what I'm saying. So I think everything that's happened up to this point is it's just it's natural progression. It's okay, and we can learn from it and move forward, which is going to be one of the things that we talk about.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's next, but let's see. Oh, yeah, actually it is. All right,
So we are in a AI hype cycle right now. So of course we have an AI question, right?
Yes. So here's the question. Given what we've seen with LLMs and all the new technology that support like the tool chains that are around these LLMs and how much you can do with them and how powerful they are. There's potentially good and bad consequences to that. So let's walk through it. How do you think, good or bad, AI is going to impact our industry? And I guess we'll just start with this direction. So Evan, you're first up, which I feel like you're very close to this.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about AI since we're a detection company. Like, can we just sprinkle some AI fairy dust on this thing and all of our problems go away? And I think that there are certain problems that AI lends itself really well to. And so I don't know, I'm not going to say, how do you think AI assistants will impact? Software development in a major way. Software development. So security, I think it's hard because security, we're solving little problems in everywhere, one little problem in everybody's application. Software development, I just told ChatGPT 3 days ago that I want a PyPy package for our company so that people can write Jupyter notebooks and talk to our API. And I've never packaged a Python package. It was done in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And that's super, super powerful. Sometimes if I'm debugging something, I'll just paste it into ChatGPT and say, fix this. And all of you at big companies are gasping right now that I'm putting this kind of data into ChatGPT.
What was the name of your company again?
It's so helpful at debugging code, at finding errors, at all of that kind of stuff. But I'd say that it's hard. You can't just apply it to everything, and it's hard to fit it in elsewhere.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any potential negative consequences for developers?
Oh yeah. If you copy the wrong, sometimes if it messes up a syntax error or something semantically, it can be impossible to debug. I've lost hours because of it, but I've gained hours because of it. It's definitely a net win. But in the security context, there can be very subtle issues when you're writing crypto code, when you're doing all sorts of stuff where one character makes all the difference. When I was at Cloudflare, we handled the Cloud Bleed vulnerability in a parser of ours, and that was a single character flaw that caused this giant memory leak that has a Wikipedia page now because of one character. So it happens.
That is so prototypical of our field.
Yeah.
Sorry, James.
Yeah, no, earlier this month I was at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, which is a all of a Fortune 500 type DevOps crew. It's run by IT Revolution and Gene Kim. And it was great. And one of the things I've noticed there is an answer to this question here is everyone was using Copilot or AI assisted development. And, that's October, right? We kind of saw a lot of the dawn of this kind of stuff less than a year ago. And I realized in that moment that, and like the only people there that were not using it, they were like ashamed. They were like, my company won't let me use it, I've got a job, right? Because and we're talking like the top lead industry here, right? So I was impressed by that because like I've never really seen the adoption cycle go so fast on something, and it's clear like everyone like talk after talk was showing benefit after benefit that they were getting from that. And I think from us from a security point of view, it's important for us to realize the magnitude of that. And so like maybe like the lights are a little bright, but who's using Copilot on a regular? Right? Okay, some, right? But I would recommend like everybody use Copilot, try it out, right? See, use it on your side project or whatever you can. I know there's that security part of the list. I don't want to leak my data to it's like, just try it. Like, see how it goes. Because people in your organization are already using it. They're already trying it, right? So don't shy away from it. Otherwise, we'll just kind of repeat the regular shadow IT cycle that we continue to do whenever there's like these new technologies that come out, right? It's like sneaking their phones to work or switching up their own clouds or whatever. So, yeah. Does that answer the question? I think that's kind of answering the question.
Yes.
I feel like we have to see the adoption is here. It's going to take away certain classes of vulnerabilities and problems as it gets smarter, and we're seeing the models develop. We're going to see less types of errors, and we're going to see a rise in other types. So we're going to need our testing and coding methodology. Now, as I think about it, that we need to be shaping towards that future, and not to one where a developer is just kind of like using developing on their ID without it, or not participating in like development as a team. It's like an organization where they're not being analyzed some way by AI.
So is there any downside you see?
I think, I've had some of the similar experiences to Evan. Like, I was like, I'm going to rig up a quick little like Node Express. I don't really know how to write Node Express myself, but I was like, let's do it. Get an error. I'm like, all right, okay. And I'm like, okay, ChatGPT, let's how do you fix this error? It's like, here's how it is. And I was like super confident. I think we've all probably seen that by now. And you're like, that also did not work. I'm like, starting out now in this like debugging mode that I get stuck in. But I think we're seeing the models get better. Like I think the data is getting better on some of this stuff. So there's probably like other more like meta type stuff that could be problems. But I'm not a believer in the like AI is coming to take your job thing. Everyone, especially at that conference I was at, it was the thought of like AI assisted development is what people wanted, right? Like it's like if you're a developer who says like I'm not gonna use AI or I'm not gonna participate in this, like okay, your job may be in question, but otherwise like it's not like they're gonna say look, AI is gonna let us go from 10 developers to 2 developers. What they're saying is like our 10 developers can go even faster and do even more and be even 15%, 20% more efficient.
Hey, did anybody see Louis Barrett's talk yet? By the way, Louis is supposed to, if you're watching this, Louis, you're supposed to be on this panel. Did anybody see his talk yesterday?
I was wondering where is he?
Yeah, he just didn't.
Okay.
Louis,
Yeah.
But show of hands, did anybody actually see it? A few? All right, it was really cool. It was really cool. He showed using Llama to do code, automated code analysis. Walked through a lot of options, a lot of fine tuning. But it is interesting because as you said, hey, it's adoption is incredibly fast with AI. He had said this, and I've experienced this too. Like I think he said he rewrote it 13 times in like the last couple weeks, just because, not because like obsession. It's because the supporting libraries he was using evolved and changed during that time. Like models, I guess there were some model updates. Like it's happening so quick, you can't even keep the talk up to date. So it is certainly like outpacing. And I will just throw this out there. I do wonder what negative consequences will come of running at full speed, adoption full speed, but like with once again us being far behind in this.
It's a question of whether or not we can keep up, right?
Right.
Because if they're using it, we should be using it as well. So if we're not in that same cycle or we're 2 steps behind, there's that again the chance for the gap and the security vulnerabilities to pop in there. So.
Always behind.
Always behind.
Sorry, Aaron.
Aaron,
Your,
yes.
your turn to answer this question.
I will do my best. Maybe I'll take a different perspective in terms of folks developing their own LLMs and maybe some of the things. Well, first, it's a massive impact, right? I don't think anyone can dispute that in terms of software development, productivity, and folks trying it out. And I think, things to be careful on, or at least supporting these, with the framework of how to do it responsibly, what sort of data, if you're using a public platform. But if you're building your own, right, you have an enterprise license. I don't know, Bing has their own, right? I know where I'm working, we support that. We building things so that way developers, software engineers can take advantage of them. But there are things that could go wrong, right? Maybe you're feeding, and training your data off of maybe internal things that maybe your security team doesn't even know. We're just scraping things. Things can go bad, right? And there's now, in your language model, right now you have some internal potential vulnerabilities that can come out, disclosures of data, et cetera. So, again, just if you have that sort of framework or have the policy and just help, work with the engineers, I think is the best way to go about it, right? And then, as tools develop, and I'm talking about sort of the automated and the static analysis and how it can help us there is a huge win, right, for us. And it's something that I'm interested in trying out, getting involved and chatting with folks. But, I just kind of zero in on the support factor, but also like, hey, there are things that can go wrong if you feed it and train it the wrong data that you're not supposed to be training, and then it becomes public. And public-private data, right, is something that I can see as in the future might be happening.
Yeah, definitely. Data privacy comes into play. I mean, you've played with it. There's a lot of, especially as you tool things together, there's a lot of room for they've talked about prompt injection and all of this stuff, all these types of things. It's just another form of injection. But yeah, as you start to couple these things together, there are a lot of areas where things can go right. And I know companies are naturally coming out to help secure this, but yeah, it is moving very, very quickly.
Early days.
It sounds like the overall net win for the panel. Sounds, cool. I'm gonna go to the next. We're a little short on, we're kind of running out of time here. So, all right, this one is kind of a new thing, and I'll give you a context in case you're not, a background on it in case you're not familiar. Essentially, CISA came out and they used to have a hardening guide, right? And now it's going to be a loosening guide. So it's an inversion of that model. So the idea being that as companies build software and sell that software, it should come with standard or secure by default standards, and then you should provide a loosening guide to your consumers so that they know not only how they can disable those secure by design choices, but also what are the ramifications if they choose to do so. Deep breath. All right.
Deep breath.
Yeah. It's wild. Yes. All right.
This sounds like it's tailor made for a pen tester, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest.
Exactly. Who wants to go first on this one?
Aaron does.
Aaron.
I just volunteered him.
Yeah.
There you go.
Volunteered me. I think that's a fascinating approach. We're going backwards. It did remind me though about the CISA, the Secure Software Development Framework, and the attestation that's also going into play, I think, early this coming year. If folks aren't aware of that, I don't know if it plays a role with the Secure by Design and loosening guide. Coming from a manufacturer's perspective with products and building things in the platform so that way customers don't make their own decisions or make it difficult to make those decisions. I think it's a good heads up for me. So that's all I gotta say.
You're gonna get some questions on that, I'm pretty sure.
Shannon Leeds was supposed to be on this panel, and she happens to be on this panel.
I'm doing God's work right now.
Yeah. So I believe that. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with this, but the stuff that she's doing at her startup, Third Score, I'm really interested in how to think about trust. I've always kind of been a believer in the publisher build materials and the serial box approach and just stuff like this where we can do self-attestation and it seems like this is a good idea. I would love to hear more of your why is this built for a pen tester? And it does feel like I'm more I read it and I'm a little worried about it sometimes too. So it feels weird.
So my initial take is wait, what? Right? It was supposed to be secure as it was, right, when it first came out. And if you talk to any developer, they're not going to say, oh, it has to be hardened, because they think they're already developing something that is hardened. So like, yes, there's always like security tweaks that go into whatever product it is, right? Default passwords, like that's a common one, right? But and this is very common when I find these frameworks like these COTS products or whatever else that we're looking at is most of my good findings in those reports come directly from the configuration documentation. Oh, look, there's an admin panel over here. When you upgrade the software, it resets the admin password to admin. And they've upgraded 3 times in the last 2 weeks. And of course, the password is admin. And, at that point, game's over, right? From a, dynamic perspective. And it's all just because whoever's administrating that site didn't look at the documentation and didn't realize that. But so part of me understands that, it's got to be secure by default. But we've had this idea of secure by default since
Forever.
Since 2010 when I got into the industry. Yes, yeah. There you go.
You sure about that? Is that where we're going?
Yeah, that's where we're going.
Okay. All right.
I don't know, Evan. What are your thoughts on that one?
I think you were getting at this, but I'm maybe a little more pithy with it. If you're developing secure by default software, then by definition, all documentation is a loosening guide.
Yeah.
So it's all about how to make it less secure. But then this just kind of reminds me of how in React you have dangerously set inner HTML. You know that whenever you're dusting off the old tome of documentation, that you're going to be doing something that is a little risky. Potentially, there's dragons in there, and so watch out. So I think it could potentially be like them trying to name this smartly, so that there's potential for bad things to happen. But that's a little wacky. I didn't know about this at all.
Yeah, like philosophically, I understand the idea of like you should just build software that's secure by default. That's really what we're saying here. Adding in some details about what goes wrong when you undo stuff. It seems like the philosophy to me, spot on. The approach, little off.
Now, if you have a hardening guide and a loosening guide for the same bit of software, it's like how?
Who wins? Where's that $50,000, James? Like, which side?
Maybe you ship your medical device with like no connection or something like that, and you're like, well, and then in court it stands up, well, they follow the loosening guide, and we're fine. Right?
I guess I'd be curious on like who is consumers here in this case. Is it like end user consumers, or is it like the customers? And like if we're putting things on like end users or like just the public, that feels like a lot riskier than like a commercial sort of offering or something like that. Just a general observation there, because I don't know if we're shifting things. I don't want to say shift, but we're shifting things in a different way. We're dumping things. Yeah, dumping them on the consumers.
It's dumping risk on
We're
someone
loosening
else.
left.
We're loosening left, dumping right. I don't know. Whatever the terms are now. So yeah, I think we have a couple more minutes. I'm not sure. We're sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip one of those questions and go right to this. Right. I love this question. I just want to make sure it was captured. So, is it time for finally? Is it time for security to become just another aspect of software quality engineering, alongside maintainability, observability, accessibility, testability, and performance? In other words, we're just another part of this quality software engineering. We're not some other secondary entity essentially. So thoughts on that? Do you agree with that statement? Do you disagree with it? This is a question from Ron Harris.
Good job, Ron.
Yeah.
Evan?
I don't know. I see a lot of afterthoughts up there. I'll be honest. You think about accessibility and how many products launch with bad accessibility features, and you think about performance. I want to ship my product as quickly as possible. Performance, we fix later. I've heard that so many times. And so I kind of think that a lot of this stuff is shipping the product for most companies is going to be priority number one. And I think that security is definitely in that list. If those are 100% security is in that list, but I don't know if accessibility is necessarily like a first-class feature of most software engineering teams, because I think it gets way overlooked.
Accessibility is like non-existent.
Right.
Totally. Anyways, FP related. James, your thoughts?
I feel like developers already believe this statement to be true, right? That when they think about quality, it's like these things all fit in here, and we're kind of taking a lean approach to like software development. It's like, well, maybe not completely fixed, maybe fix the edge of your performance problems later, right? But it's like there's a certain level that they want to get to, right? They know that's going to have a certain amount of availability or stability or whatever, right? All the idiots, right? So I believe that like they already think that way, and so like I think it's really on us as security to realize like we can fit into that umbrella of quality. That's my belief.
I think 100%. Like if you built like your culture to integrate with the teams, the quality measurements, like and how you're performing, you're in those same sort of sessions with them. So what my group is trust assurance, and a lot of that is around like data and measurements, and we do have those sessions with them. You're also enabling them, right, to also build those tests as well. So it's not just security putting these integration, whatever, we're checking for permissions or something, I don't know. But it's also them taking, the initiative and doing it themselves, and it feels more like it's their idea. It's them solving a problem. It's them working for security as an extension of our team. So definitely a lot of afterthoughts, but at the same time, like the best way that we can fit in, to observability, performance, and everything else, right? I think is probably the way you want to build your culture.
Yeah, it kind of moves to that push versus pull model, right? Like so developers can pull stuff in right along the paved road or whatever. It's like we want to do that, right? Like we know like all along the value stream, we're trying to sort that out and pull those pieces in. So security can be a piece of the quality and like of actually shipping software. Yeah, like that's a pull mechanism is there.
So we have time for this one last question. This is really open-ended, and really interested to hear your all's thoughts on this one. So in the next 12 to 18 months, what should practitioners be looking at, focusing on, thinking about, and anything at all?
Should we start down at this end?
Yes.
We didn't give Aaron. Aaron had no heads up on any of the questions, so
it's
more raw for him.
Winging it. Next 12 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
AppSec practitioners. I mean, stick to the basics, the core of what it is that we're doing in securing, the quality of our offerings, right, and how we can ensure that those activities, are sustainable. We're building things interoperably. We're not pigeonholing or developing processes or things that make it more difficult for developer experience or just the way of working. So kind of maybe comes with maybe more experience to build something like that. But as more sort of challenges and more languages and more things come about, right? Like the more you can be agile and the way you build your program and your processes, I think you'll be more successful and be able to pivot when you need to.
Okay, cool. James?
Yeah, I did have a small preview of the deck, but I'll admit, when I got to this screen, I was like, I'm not sure what Crocs and socks have to do with anything. And I really didn't even read the question. I was just like, wow, this is going to be a fun panel.
Okay,
Yeah.
So go back and listen to the podcast. You'll get it.
Yeah. Well, sorry about the I was distracted with that. Okay, so what's next? What should AppSec be thinking about? I think if we are thinking about how we do security in line with the developer, and so if you're thinking like whenever I commit code to whatever is able to run in production, what's that time? What can I do to make that time smaller? Right, and also I think like leveraging AI and some other components, so like looking for ways to kind of just increase code velocity, make that overall cycle time be better, so we can at least be helping productivity along the way. And I think that's the name of the game for AppSec, the next bit here.
Great.
Well, since we're talking about trends, does it say trend? Oh no. What should?
What slide are you reading? We can change it really quick. That's fine.
Okay, so if my answer to this would be like the sticking to the basics. I think that AppSec, when it's working, is about scaling the most micro interaction you have with developers, and at the application layer, the smallest interaction you have fixing things and making it right to as many places as you can. And I think that you have to go really deep everywhere you go. when you're working with other developers or when you're trying to secure a product or something. And so it's about scaling that. So sticking to the basics. And since I thought the word trends was up there, then probably AI, since we were just talking about
AI hype cycle.
not
Yes,
NFTs.
yes, yeah. Well, so and to that point, right? Like those of you that haven't listened to the podcast, like I always get made fun of because I talk about the dad stuff of AppSec, which is the Crocs and socks, like the basics of what we do, right? Like AAA.
You don't have any of your New Balances on.
No, I don't. Not today. Not today. I left them.
Your good ones.
The good ones, yeah. But that's what the Crocs and socks is about. Like to your point, and that's what I'm hearing is it's not necessarily about I have to go implement AI and LLMs in my like process. It's about doing the basics and using that to enhance what we already know works, right? So whether that is the paved path idea, whether that is communication with developers, whether that is integrating with different teams, it's all about those basics. I mean, that's what I see. Ken, what do you?
No, I mean, I agree with everything. I have actually nothing, frankly, I have nothing more to add here. I thought I would have a lot to add here. I really don't. I do think just being up to speed, what you guys all said, it's not just LLMs, it's sort of just keeping pace with adoption. It's always hard. But yeah, you kind of have, it's not just this 12 to 18 months, it's always, you're constantly trying to keep up with what people are building on top of. And that's going to be a challenge. AI may help there, but it may not. We'll see.
I mean, like just to kind of put a bow on it. I feel like the future is bright. There's a lot of good things that are happening. I think with the advent of AI and some of these new technologies that are coming out, like we're better positioned to have an effect on software security in general. So like. There's been times in my career that I get pretty like down and negative about everything that I see because the same vulnerabilities over and over, right? Like if I have to test for XSS one more time, right? Like it's not the same as it was. And so, but now I'm seeing people get re-energized about the same things just because there is a new technology that we can apply and different ways that we can start to think about it. With that, thank you to our panelists for joining us today. Thank you to LASCON for having us. I think we have like maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Is there any questions from the crowd that anybody wants to ask? Put Aaron on the spot a couple more times. That's what we were going with.
And while we wait to see if anybody has any questions, I didn't really do a good job in the beginning of really explaining it. We kind of talked a little bit, joked a little bit kind of about their background. But for what it's worth, for Seth, myself, Seth and I have known each other for so long. I mean, this guy hired me for my first private sector gig. Jeez, I can't talk or think of it. Anyway, so I've known him a long time, and I've grown with these folks as well throughout the industry, and they've helped build communities, influence, cheat sheet standards, all these sorts of interesting things. You've done a lot of work in the mobile space. It's just been, IoT. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, it's really cool to hear your thoughts because you all have been in this industry for so long. You have touched, like I said, so many pieces of it. And so it's great. It really is great to have you all up here and get to hear your thoughts and see your careers evolve as well. Yeah. Any questions though? Anybody? No.
All right. Cool. Good deal. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your time. Thank you.
No, it's all good.
It was good. That was good. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Well, sorry I blew across the soccer reference.
No, you're fine.
James.
Yeah,
Seen
sorry,
you.
Aaron.
Seen you.
Yeah, great.
You're great.
Hey, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, right.
I guess we should have like introduced. I felt like we were just rolling into it.
Yeah.
We gotta go.
That's fine.
You doing?
It was
Yeah.
great. I really
About an hour ago.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
You guys have it.
We've got minutes.
Yeah, at this point, right? Like that's it.
It's okay. It was fun.
I appreciate it.
So
Long live Crocs and socks.
see y'all.
Hey, see you, Evan. Thanks.